The morning sunlight filtered softly through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow across the bridal suite. Emily sat at the edge of the velvet ottoman, her white silk robe tied neatly around her waist, hands resting in her lap. Her reflection stared back at her from the vanity mirror, eyes alert, cheeks flushed, lips trembling just slightly. It was her wedding day, a day she had imagined since she was a little girl, a day she had meticulously planned for over a year, a day that was supposed to mark the beginning of forever. Downstairs, laughter and excitement filled the air. Bridesmaids fluttered from room to room. Photographers snapped candids, and her mother adjusted floral centerpieces one last time. Everything was perfect. The venue, a restored Victorian estate surrounded by spring gardens, was something out of a storybook. Guests were beginning to arrive. The string quartet rehearsed quietly in the garden, and in just a few hours, she would walk down the aisle toward Daniel. Daniel, even thinking his name made her heart beat faster, but there was an odd twist in her chest today. Not nerves exactly, but something else, something colder, something she had been trying to ignore for weeks. A strange distance in his voice. Late nights at the office. Missed calls. Excuses that once made sense but lately felt rehearsed. Emily told herself it was just stress. Weddings were overwhelming. Daniel was a perfectionist, and he wanted everything to go right. Still, the feeling didn't go away. "Are you okay?" asked Mia, her maid of honor, who had just returned with coffee and a fresh pastry. Emily nodded, just overwhelmed. "Of course you are. You're about to marry the love of your life. You've earned this moment, Em. You both have." And she had. They both had. Emily and Daniel had spent 5 years building their life together from the ground up. They met during their first year out of college at a networking mixer neither of them wanted to attend. He had been charming, self-assured, and unexpectedly funny. She had been skeptical, guarded, still nursing the wounds of an old relationship. But Daniel had a way of slipping past her defenses. He saw her ambition, her passion for storytelling, and supported her dreams with his own quiet determination. Their rise had been anything but smooth. Emily juggled freelance gigs for months before landing a full-time job in publishing. Daniel worked brutal hours in finance, fight his way out of mediocrity with every deal he closed. They shared cheap takeout dinners, secondhand furniture, and long, honest conversations that sometimes turned into arguments. But through it all, they held on to each other. They talked about marriage often, sometimes in whispers at 2 a.m., sometimes while arguing over bills. They had grown through everything: job losses, sick parents, financial scares, and too many nights spent apart. Their engagement, when it finally happened during a snowy weekend in the mountains, had felt like a quiet victory. Not a fairy tale proposal, but something real. She thought she knew everything about him. His favorite scotch, the way he bit the inside of his cheek when nervous, the childhood scar on his wrist from climbing a neighbor's fence. They had weathered storms. She believed that meant they could survive anything. Mia was adjusting Emily's veil when the text came. A single buzz from her phone, resting on the vanity beside a bouquet of peonies. Emily glanced at the screen casually. The number was unknown. "Check this before you say I do. You deserve to know the truth." Her breath caught. "What is it?" Mia asked, eyeing her reaction. "Nothing. Just spam," Emily replied quickly, locking the screen. But her fingers were trembling. She couldn't resist. As Mia stepped away to speak with the hairstylist, Emily unlocked her phone and opened the message again. Attached was a link. Her pulse quickened. She looked around. The room was bustling with voices and movement. No one noticed her open the browser. The page loaded slowly. It was a photo. Daniel, with another woman, in a dimly lit lounge, his arm around her, their faces close. Emily's stomach turned. There were more photos. The next showed them kissing. Another had them laughing over drinks. The timestamp was just 3 weeks ago, while Daniel was away on a business trip to Chicago. The final image was a screenshot of a chat conversation. "Daniel, you looked so beautiful last night. I wish things were different. Unknown, they can be, but you have to tell her. She deserved that much." "Daniel, I will. I promise. After the wedding, Emily's hands grew cold. It's time to put on your dress, her mother called from the other room. She stared at the screen. After the wedding, Emily's hands were still cold when she stepped into her dress. The lace bodice hugged her body perfectly, the train trailing behind like a river of silk. The room erupted into gasps and praise, her mother's eyes welling with tears, Mia clutching her phone for photos, the photographer snapping away. Through it all, Emily smiled, a perfect smile, the kind brides are meant to wear. But inside, her world had tilted. The images, the messages, they were burned into her mind like ink on paper. She had barely had time to process what she saw, and yet her body moved forward as if on autopilot. She went through the motions, responding to compliments, holding her bouquet, posing against a tall window for golden hour shots. She could hear Daniel's voice in her head, see his face in those photos. She remembered how he had looked at her just last night during the rehearsal dinner, tired but affectionate. How could someone fake that so well? The worst part was how easily she could have missed it, how close she had come to stepping into a marriage built on lies. Are you nervous? Mia whispered as they stood by the doorway, waiting for the signal to walk. Emily shook her head slowly. Not nervous, just ready. The ceremony was being held in the garden, under a white arch draped with flowers. The guests had taken their seats. Music played softly, her chosen song, one she and Daniel had slow danced in their kitchen months ago. Her father extended his arm. She took it. As they walked down the aisle, Emily scanned the crowd. Rows of smiling faces, friends, family, co-workers. At the end of the aisle stood Daniel. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored navy suit, his eyes locked on hers. He smiled. She returned it, but it wasn't real. Every step toward him felt like stepping closer to a cliff. She wanted to scream, to stop the ceremony. But part of her needed to be sure, needed to know that this wasn't a sick prank, that the betrayal was as real as the photo suggested. As her father placed her hand into Daniel's, she looked into his eyes, searching for something, guilt, fear, anything. But Daniel looked calm, happy, certain. The officiant began. Words drifted around her like fog. Promises, vows, love, trust. She remembered every night they had stayed up late planning this day. The way he had laughed about cake flavors, how he had cried when they first visited the venue. Could he really have been faking it all? When it came time for their vows, Daniel spoke first. His voice was steady, warm, filled with affection. He spoke of their journey, their growth, how she had made him a better man. Emily almost believed him. Then it was her turn. She stared down at her written vows, but the words blurred. Something inside her shifted. She folded the paper and placed it back into her bouquet. I was going to read you something beautiful, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. But instead, I want to share something else. The crowd murmured softly, unsure of what was happening. I got a message this morning from someone who thought I should know the truth about you, Daniel. Daniel's expression froze. Emily reached into the folds of her dress and pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen and held it up. This, she said, turning the screen toward the officiant, is what I received just hours before we stood here. Photos, messages of you with another woman. Gasps rippled through the guests. Daniel's eyes widened, his jaw tightening. Emily, she held up her hand. No, you don't get to speak. Not now. A silence fell over the garden. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. I don't know who sent it yet, she continued, her voice trembling only slightly. But I believe them, because I know what I felt these past few weeks. I know what I've ignored. The late nights, the cold shoulder, the half-truths. Emily looked out at the guests. We've been together for 5 years. We built everything together. We fought for our careers, our future. I believed in him. I loved him. Her eyes returned to Daniel. But I won't start my marriage with a lie. Then she took a step back. And another. Her bouquet dropped to grass. I deserve better, she whispered. And with that, she turned and walked back up the aisle, leaving stunned silence in her wake. The echo of her footsteps on the flagstone pathway was all she could hear as she walked away from the altar. Somewhere behind her, voices erupted. Confused guests, her mother calling her name, Mia sprinting after her in heels. But Emily didn't stop, not until she reached the edge of the garden, where the low stone wall met the trees. She pressed her hands against the cool surface, breathing hard. Her heart pounded like a war drum in her chest. It had taken everything in her not to break down in front of everyone. Her dress was heavy now, the air suddenly thick with the scent of roses, too sweet, too fake, just like everything Daniel had said. Mia caught up with her, breathless. "Emily, what the hell just happened?" "I couldn't do it," she whispered. "No, I got that part. But that message, was it real?" Emily nodded. "Photos, texts, time-stamped from 3 weeks ago, while he was in Chicago." Mia's face twisted into disbelief. "You're telling me he cheated on you, weeks before your wedding?" "I think so. No, I know so. I just didn't want to believe it until I saw the proof." Mia leaned against the wall beside her, stunned. "Jesus, Emily looked down at her hands. Her engagement ring sparkled mockingly in the sun. She slipped it off and held it for a long moment before placing it carefully on the wall, as though it might burn her fingers. "I need to know who sent that message," she said quietly. "I need to know everything." The guests had begun to scatter, murmuring in clusters, some still too shocked to leave. Emily watched them from the upper balcony of her suite, having changed out of her wedding dress and into a simple blouse and jeans. The surrealism of it all hit her in waves. The staff moved quickly, clearing the reception tables. The floral centerpieces remained untouched. The cake stood whole and perfect in the center of the hall, like a monument to everything that didn't happen. Daniel hadn't tried to come up to see her. That, in itself, said everything. Her mother knocked softly before letting herself in. "Sweetheart," her voice cracked. Emily turned, forcing herself to stay strong. "I'm not sorry," she said. "Please don't try to talk me out of it." "I wouldn't, not after what you showed. I just—" Her mother reached for her, wrapping her in a long, protective hug. "I'm proud of you. I know it hurts, but I'm proud." Emily didn't cry. Not then. She just nodded, accepting the comfort in silence. Later, she sat on the edge of the hotel bed, phone in hand, scrolling back through the images. She enlarged one of the screenshots. The name of the contact was blurred out, but the area code was the same as theirs. Local. She reread the chat again. "Daniel, I promise. After the wedding." "Unknown, you said that last week. I'm not waiting anymore." Whoever sent it had reached their breaking point. But why now? Why not weeks earlier? Her phone buzzed. New message. Same unknown number. "If you want the full story, meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Crescent Park, near the lake." Emily stared at the message, her pulse quickening. Her fingers hovered over the screen, torn between fear and fury. Then she typed one word. "I'll be there." Crescent Park was quiet in the morning. The air was crisp, the surface of the lake still and glassy, mirroring the pale clouds above. Emily stood by the old wooden bench that curved along the shore, her hands shoved deep into her coat pockets. She hadn't slept much. Her mind had replayed yesterday's chaos on loop. Every gasp, every glance, every heartbeat. She kept scanning the path, half expecting no one to show up. Maybe it was all a cruel trick. Or maybe it was Daniel himself, planning some warped excuse or emotional ambush. But when the woman appeared, Emily knew immediately. It was her. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, with long dark hair pulled into a loose braid and eyes that carried too much emotion for someone so composed. She was dressed simply, almost nervously, as if she wasn't sure what was appropriate to wear when revealing the kind of truth that rips lives apart. Emily stayed still as the woman approached. They studied each other in silence. "You sent the message," Emily said. It wasn't a question. The woman nodded. "I'm sorry it had to be like that." Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's really no good way to drop a bomb. "My name is Leah." Emily didn't respond at first. She let the name sit between them like a stone. Leah continued, voice quiet. I didn't know about you. Not at first. He told me he was single. Said he was recovering from a bad relationship. We met through a friend. It was casual. But then things got serious. Emily clenched her jaw. How serious? Leah hesitated. I'm pregnant. The words hit like a slap. 2 weeks ago, she added. That's when I found out. I told him. He panicked. I thought he was going to come clean. But instead, he left town again. I got suspicious. I did some digging. Found the wedding registry. Emily turned away, struggling to breathe. I didn't want to ruin your life, Leah said. But I couldn't stay silent either. You deserve the truth. Emily's voice was hoarse. Did he tell you he loved you? Leah's eyes filled with tears. Yes. The silence between them deepened, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with broken promises and fractured illusions. I spent 5 years with him, Emily said, her voice shaking. 5 years building a future, a home. I thought I knew him better than anyone. I believe you did, Leah replied. But the version of him I saw, it wasn't the same man. Or maybe it was, and he just got very good at pretending. Emily looked down at the lake, tears stinging her eyes. What are you going to do now? Leah asked. Emily breathed in deeply. The air was cold but clean. I don't know, but I'm not going to let him define what comes next. I'm not going to be a victim in this story. Leah nodded slowly. If it means anything, I never would have gotten involved if I had known. Emily gave her a long look. I believe you. For now, it was enough. They parted without a hug or goodbye. Just a quiet understanding between two women caught in the orbit of the same lie. Emily sat alone in the corner booth of a small cafe downtown, stirring a lukewarm cup of coffee. The rain outside traced quiet trails down the window pane, and people passed by beneath umbrellas, unaware of the storm still raging inside her. She hadn't spoken to Daniel, not since the ceremony. He hadn't tried to call. No messages, no explanations, only silence, as if he were waiting for the fallout to settle before choosing his next move. But Emily wasn't waiting anymore. She opened a notebook she carried with her everywhere during the wedding planning. It had once held fabric swatches, sketches of floor arrangements, lists of songs. Now, she turned to a blank page, and she began to write, not a letter to Daniel, but a record of them, 5 years. They'd met at a marketing conference in Seattle. He was charming, loud in a confident way, and full of ideas. She was quieter, more calculated, but intrigued by his energy. They'd stayed up late talking about strategy, trends, startups. He'd followed her back to New York 2 months later. They built everything from scratch, started a boutique firm together, pitched clients, fought the rejections, celebrated tiny wins with cheap champagne. She'd seen him at his lowest, when their bank account dipped below zero, when a major deal fell through, and she'd seen him at his best, when her first big campaign went viral, when they moved into their loft apartment. They'd made it together. He had been her partner in more than business. He had been home. She flipped to the next page. The little things. The way he always woke her up with coffee. The late-night ramen runs. Their annual trip to the mountains in October. The playlist they built together for long drives. The inside jokes that could still make her laugh even now, through the ache in her chest. Had all of it been a lie? No, that was the cruelest part. She knew he had loved her once. Maybe he still did in some broken, cowardly way. But love without loyalty wasn't love at all. It was possession. Her phone buzzed. It was Mia. You need to see this. Check your email. Emily clicked the link Mia had sent. A forwarded message. Screenshots from another woman. More texts. More evidence. Daniel had a pattern. Different cities. Same script. One lie after another. There had been others before Leah. Maybe even during the early years. Emily's fingers trembled. She had excused so many things. The business trips. The long nights at the office. The shifts in affection. The half-baked apologies. She had written it off as stress, as fatigue, because they were building something, because she believed in him, and he had counted on that belief to cover his tracks. Her stomach turned, not from heartbreak this time, but from anger. She felt it rise, burning away the last of her confusion. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the other women. The way he moved through lives, leaving messes behind. She wouldn't stay quiet. She wouldn't be one of his buried secrets. Emily closed a notebook, stood, and left her coffee cold on the table. As she stepped into the rain, she no longer felt like she was drowning in it. She was becoming the storm. The silence of the house was unfamiliar. After the wedding disaster, Emily had gone back to the place she and Daniel once shared, a loft in Brooklyn, all sleek wood and exposed brick, filled with curated furniture and framed memories. His cologne still lingered faintly in the closet, and a single suit jacket hung behind the door, like a ghost that hadn't realized it was dead. She sat at the dining table with her laptop open and her wedding guest list pulled up on screen. This wasn't for reminiscing. It was strategy. Every single name, every plus one, every extended family member who had traveled across state lines to witness a dream unravel before their eyes. She owed them the truth. She drafted a message. Dear friends and family, thank you for being there on what was meant to be the happiest day of my life. As many of you witnessed, the wedding did not go as planned. I feel it's only fair you know why. On the morning of my wedding, I received an anonymous message containing proof that Daniel had been unfaithful, most recently 2 weeks before our wedding. The woman is pregnant. Over the past few days, I've discovered that she wasn't the only one. I want you to know that I stood before that altar ready to begin a life built on love, trust, and commitment. I walked away because I refused to begin my future with a lie. I appreciate your support, your grace, and your patience. Please do not reach out to him on my behalf. This is not a scandal I want to feed. It is a chapter 1 I'm closing, with strength and gratitude. Emily. She stared at the screen, then sent it to everyone on the list. It was terrifying and freeing. Not 20 minutes later, responses poured in. Texts, emails, calls. You're so brave. We support you 100%. I always had a weird feeling about him. She read every word. Some made her laugh, some made her cry, but none of them made her doubt herself. Then came a message from someone unexpected. Daniel's cousin, Rachel. Emily, I'm so sorry this happened. I don't know what to say except he's done this before. Our family covered it up. I didn't agree with it, but I stayed quiet. I shouldn't have. If you need to talk, I'm here. Emily sat back. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, one that had been protected. Her hands itched to do something. Say something. And something. She opened her notebook again, flipping past pages of pain and memory. She began writing again, this time a speech. Not for Daniel. Not for vengeance. But for herself. There would be a gathering. An event. Not a wedding, but something else. Something honest. She would invite the same guests, stand before them in the same space, and instead of vows, she would tell the story. Uncensored, unfiltered, the truth in her own voice. The venue staff were hesitant at first. Want to use the same space? The manager asked, glancing down at the reservation list. Yes, Emily replied firmly. Same hall, same time, just a different purpose. The woman blinked. No wedding? No groom, Emily corrected, but I'll still be wearing white. The preparations came together faster than she expected. People were eager to help. Vendors who heard what happened and refused to charge her again. Friends who came early to rearrange the room. Gone were the soft, romantic centerpieces. In their place stood tall glass cylinders with single candles inside. Simple, stark, real. The guest list stayed mostly the same, though a few names were now crossed out, including Daniel's. She didn't care if he showed. He wasn't the audience anymore. As people filtered in, they wore a mix of confusion and curiosity. No one really knew what to expect. Some probably thought she was throwing a bitter anti-wedding. Some a farewell. A few, perhaps, thought this was her breaking down in public. They were wrong. Emily stood at the front of the room, wearing a clean white pantsuit, tailored sharp. No veil, no bouquet, just her. When the room quieted, she took the microphone. Her palms were dry. Her voice was steady. Thank you all for coming again, she began. The last time we were here, you watched me walk away from a man I was supposed to marry. A lot of you were confused, hurt, embarrassed on my behalf. I understand. She paused, letting the silence settle. But I'm not embarrassed. I'm angry, and I'm awake. A hush fell over the guests, deeper than the one before. I spent 5 years with someone who, in the end, didn't respect me enough to be honest, and I spent a few days thinking I had been naive, weak, but I wasn't. I was loyal. I was trusting. I was all the things love is supposed to be. He was not. She reached into her folder and pulled out printed screenshots, messages, names redacted, dates not. I received this the morning of the wedding, she said, holding up the first page, and then more from other women. People who trusted him, believed him, people like me. Gasps rippled through the audience. Emily didn't flinch. I'm not here to humiliate him. I'm not here to get revenge. I'm here because women are told to suffer quietly, to keep the peace, to protect someone else's reputation, even when it breaks us. She let that sit. I won't do that anymore. There was a long pause. Then a single person clapped. Then another. Soon, the room erupted, not in pity, but in admiration. After the speech, guests came forward in waves. Some hugged her. Some cried. Some shared their own stories of betrayal, silence, survival. She hadn't just told her truth. She had opened a door for others to walk through. Later that night, as the candles burned low and the hall slowly emptied, Emily stood by the arched windows, watching the city lights blur in the distance. She had lost something. Yes, but she had reclaimed something greater. The morning after the gathering, Emily awoke to a dozen missed calls. From unknown numbers. From blocked ones. From Daniel. She didn't answer. Her inbox was a battlefield. Some messages were from women she didn't know. Strangers who had seen the video clips someone posted from the event. Women thanking her for speaking out. For naming what so many kept hidden. Others were less kind. You didn't have to go that far. This should have stayed private. You're just trying to ruin a man's life. Emily scrolled through them, calm. Daniel's message finally arrived in her inbox late that afternoon. Emily, I don't even know where to start. You blindsided me. You made me look like a monster. And you didn't even give me a chance to explain. Yes, I messed up. But what you did, that was cold. Public. You want the world to think I'm some kind of predator. I'm not. I made mistakes. But I loved you. I still do. I need to talk to you. Not texts, not emails. Face to face. One chance. Emily read it 3 times, then deleted it. She didn't need an explanation. She didn't need closure. She already had it. What surprised her was what came next. Not from Daniel, but from Leah. A handwritten letter. Emily, I watched the video. I cried through the entire thing. I know I played a part in what happened to you, even unknowingly. I want you to know I've decided to keep the baby. Not for him. For me. Daniel reached out. He offered support, then took it back when I said I wouldn't lie for him. That's who he is. A man who offers comfort only when it serves him. I don't want him in this child's life unless he changes. Really changes. You said something at the event that stuck with me. Love without loyalty isn't love, it's possession. That line, it changed me. Thank you for telling the truth. For all of us. With respect. Leah. Emily held the letter to her chest for a long time. Then she tucked it into her notebook beside her own pages of pain. The world hadn't fallen apart. Not really. What had shattered was illusion. And in the rubble, something real was beginning to take shape. The loft didn't feel like hers anymore. Emily walked from room to room, taking inventory, not of furniture or clothes, but of the memories. The laughter in the kitchen where they'd once cooked every Sunday. The plants she'd nurtured on the balcony, now overgrown and wild. The wine stains on a rug from that night. They'd stayed up celebrating their first $1 million client. Every corner whispered his name. But Emily was done listening. She packed only what she needed, not what reminded her of him, or even of them. Just the things that belonged to her. Notebooks filled with ideas, her favorite art prints, the blue ceramic mug she bought on her first solo trip to Lisbon. Mia showed up that evening with a bottle of red and 3 takeout bags. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" she asked as they sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by half-filled boxes. "I've never been more sure of anything," Emily replied. "This chapter's over, and I'm ready to write the next one." Mia raised a brow. "Do you mean that metaphorically or—" "Both," Emily said with a small smile. "I've been thinking about writing a book." Mia froze mid-bite. "Wait. Seriously, why not?" Emily said, "I have 5 years of experience in business, branding, and personal betrayal. That's a trilogy right there." They both laughed, but there was steel behind Emily's words. It wasn't just about telling the story. It was about owning it, reclaiming the narrative that had almost broken her. The move took 2 days. Emily found a 1-bedroom in a quieter neighborhood, smaller, simpler, but full of light. She painted the walls herself, hung her art, made coffee in the mornings in silence that finally felt peaceful. She began writing at dawn, not for work, not for clients, just for herself. The words came slowly at first, then all at once. She wrote about love, about how it can lift and blind at the same time, about betrayal, not the loud, cinematic kind, but the quiet, daily kind, the slow erosion of truth, the power of walking away, not out of weakness, but out of strength. And people listened. A blog post went viral, then an article, then a podcast invitation. She didn't set out to become a voice for others, but maybe, unintentionally, she had, not a symbol of heartbreak, but of healing, because even the deepest cuts could leave space for something new to grow. It had been 6 months since the wedding that wasn't. 6 months since Emily stood in front of a room full of guests and dismantled the life she was supposed to live. Now, her mornings began with coffee and silence, her phone blessedly still. Her book was nearly done. Her following online had grown, not because she sought fame, but because people saw in her something they hadn't been able to name in themselves: resilience. She hadn't heard from Daniel in months, and she liked it that way. Until one rainy afternoon, she opened her mailbox and saw a handwritten envelope. No return address. The handwriting stopped her breath. Inside, a single letter. No fanfare. No signature. "Emily, you once told me that trust is earned every day, not once, not with a ring, not even with 5 years. I didn't understand then. I do now. I watched your speech. Twice. Maybe more. You were right. I didn't love you the way you deserved. I loved you the way I was taught love should look: possessive, secretive, conditional. You love with truth. I didn't. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing to thank you. You exposed me. You freed yourself. But you also forced me to look in the mirror for the first time. Not the man I showed the world, but the man I hid even from myself. The woman you heard from, the one who's pregnant. I'm not with her. Not because of what happened, because she saw the same cracks you did. I'm trying to be better. For the child. For myself. And because deep down, I want to be the man you once believed in, even if you never see him again." Emily folded the letter slowly. Her chest was tight, not with pain, but with clarity. She had once dreamed of a moment like this, where he'd come crawling back, admit everything, beg for another chance. But now, standing in her kitchen, bathed in soft gray light, she felt only peace. She didn't need his guilt or his growth. She had her own. Emily slipped the letter into a drawer, closed it, and looked around the apartment she had built herself. No shadows, no lies, just her. And as she sat down at her desk, hands hovering over the keyboard, she realized the story wasn't ending. It was just beginning.